What up, everyone? Welcome back to Blade Bias. Plastic Balisongs, 3D printed ones specifically, not talking about like the Squiddy or anything like that, are exciting for me again. And not to say that they weren't exciting before, but with plastic, the history between me and plastic is going between waves of being excited about them and then being not excited about them, because there's always like there's a time of space. A time of space. What am I saying? Let me just reset there. There is a time where the established plastic makers aren't releasing anything new. And we were kind of getting into that. The Calico had come out earlier this year, was selling pretty well, from what I can tell at least. Zippy had the diode, and then everything just kind of died down. And it returned to a state of like, you have 3D printed manufacturers releasing designs or releasing renders for designs and then never doing anything with them, which is kind of what happened back when I found the original Tay Flipper and Cycloid, which made me kind of bored of plastic way back then. But then the Cycloid and the Tay Flipper brought me back in. Same with the Calico, and now the Edit, because now I'm in a space where plastic balisongs I am more excited about than some metal balisongs. Like, we just had the announcement of the titanium Superfly. And like, I mean, yeah, that's like super cool. BB Barfly, titanium, that's awesome. And I mean, with the exception of the Kraken Trainer V3, which I'm extraordinarily excited about, none of the metal releases lately have really like gotten to me. Not in the way, holy cow, not in the way that plastic has, because the Edit has made me excited about plastic balisongs in a whole new way. And made me just kind of go back and reflect on previous plastic balisongs that have existed, which made me want to do my top 3 plastic balisongs and why I like them so much. Because I have my top 3 metal balisongs. I've talked about them before: the Impusa, the Nemesis, and the Kraken, in no particular order. But the thing about plastic is that I actually can give an order to these ones, and I can give very specific reasons as to why all of those are. So I figured, hell, why not? Now that I finally got my thoughts together on the Edit, why not tell people about where everything stands in my collection? First up, at number 3, we have the Calico. The Calico, an extremely exciting project and an extremely unique project, to be sure. This got me back into plastic balisongs in a huge way, because I had my Cycloid, my Tay Flipper, and that's really all I needed. I didn't really care about any new plastic balisongs. And then the Calico came out, and that all changed. Kind of similar to what the Edit did. I had the Calico, and I had the Tay Flipper and the diode and all that. And I was like, yeah, I don't really care about any new plastic balisongs. And then the Flip Forge came out. But tangent aside, we'll get to that later. The Calico is such a unique plastic balisong. It has this weird, like, heavy handle bias, but it's still like super neutral, and I just love it so much. It fans so well. It's got a really nice weight to it. Despite being 2.4 ounces, it does not feel like 2.4 ounces. Comfortable chaplains, sticky chaplains, just really fun and unique to flip. And of course, the design is awesome. Tay killed it with his little cat ear design. But there's a specific reason that the Calico is number 3 for me, and that is the weight distribution. If there is one thing that the Haystack Jigsaw, which I will do one final video on, I know you guys are getting bored of this, but if there's one thing that the Jigsaw taught me, it's that weight distribution matters so much more than I thought it did. And that realization is sort of what made me, not even that realization with the Jigsaw specifically, but going back and flipping my original Tay Flipper, made me realize just how weird the weight distribution on the Calico was, because all of the weight is in the ends of the blade and the ends of the handles. And that's not exactly the best for being a consistent flipper. It's a very fun flipper, don't get me wrong, and I can flip it better than most of my other balisongs, because that weird handle bias while still being able to fan neutrally is what I love. It's why I love my Nemesis so much. The Nemesis fans well, but it also has weight at the end of the handles to make it so that you can do rollovers and things like that very well. To make my favorite trainer of all time, currently at least. The Calico is the same way. It's unique, it's super, super weird, but it needs to be because it's plastic. And it's just an overall exciting and great design. But that weird weight distribution is not as subtle as it is on the Nemesis. And so it makes it rank slightly lower than this next Balisong, the Flip Forge Edit. Now the Edit really surprised me because I did not expect to be as excited about the Edit as I was. Flip Forge initially reached out and wanted me to try it, wanted to get my feedback on it. And I was like, yeah, sure, send me one over. And that was kind of it for a few months. I wasn't really thinking about it. It wasn't something that was on my radar until I really started thinking about what the Edit offered, which is a heavy customizable plastic experience. And if that was weighted well and distributed and balanced well, that would go really hard. And thankfully, that is exactly what happened. The Edit is just amazing. It's weighted really well. 3.0 ounces is amazing for plastic. And honestly, my new favorite weight for plastic, except on a few examples, which we'll touch on later. And it's just a really fun Balisong. This is an EDC plastic public flipper for sure. And it's weighted pretty well too, because the weight is all distributed evenly. There's no weights in the end of the handles and the end of the blade. There's rods that go throughout the whole thing to make it a heavier Balisong, but not in the ends of the handles, in the whole thing. And that's something that the Calico kind of struggles with. You can feel just how light this area is. But in the Flip Forge Edit, you can feel just how the weight goes through the whole thing rather than just the ends. And it makes for an experience that's really, really, really good. But not my favorite, and unique. It is very unique, especially with its size. Can also do this scissor thing on it better than any other Balisong I have. But it's not my favorite. And everyone saw this coming. Made plenty of videos on it before. Because the Tay Flipper is my favorite. Oh my god, that barely fits in there. Okay. The Tay Flipper is just a masterclass in weight distribution. The Tay Flipper is what I think the Haze-Tech Jigsaw wanted to be. Because much like the Jigsaw, the Tay Flipper has perfect weight distribution. But it also carries momentum almost flawlessly, fans almost flawlessly, and rollovers almost flawlessly. Like, I cannot understate I cannot overstate, actually, how amazing this thing is for my style of flipping and my preferences specifically. It's 2.4 ounces, but its size makes it feel much heavier than it is. It's not really handle biased, but it's also not really blade biased. The weight distribution is spread evenly throughout all of the handles, despite there being obvious focal points towards the ends. There's no hot spots like there are in the Calico. And the thing that puts it above the Edit for me is the fact that there's no weirdness when you flip it. The Edit just has this bit of shakiness to it, specifically when you're fanning and doing rollovers, that I think just comes down to just how it's balanced. I'm not really entirely sure what causes it, but there's just a slight bit of shakiness to it that doesn't make it feel the best. I mean, it makes it feel really good, but as soon as you compare it to a Tay Flipper, you'll kind of understand what I'm talking about. Because the Tay Flipper doesn't have any of that. The Tay Flipper isn't shaky. It isn't weird. It just goes. Whatever you tell it to do, it does, and it does it amazingly. I've learned so many tricks on this thing, and I legitimately, if I wouldn't say this about any other plastic Balisong, if I could only choose one thing from my collection, and you forced me to choose the Tay Flipper, I would probably be pretty happy. If you forced me to choose like the Diode, I probably wouldn't be very happy, because the Diode is just too light for me to flip all the time. But the Tay Flipper could legitimately be one of those for me. And it's just... It's just a masterclass. This is one of the most perfect plastic balisongs ever made, in my humble opinion. Yeah. It aged like a fine wine. I tried it. I loved it so much. This doesn't happen often. I tried a Tay flipper and I bought it like 2 days later. I bought one after I tried one, despite thinking that the Tay flipper was not something I'd be interested in. Picked it up, flipped it, bought one a few days later. That's how good it is. And it's only gotten better. Every time I pick it up, I'm like, holy cow. Every time I think the Edit might have beaten it, I pick it back up and it's just like, oh, this is just perfect. Because the Edit, despite being pretty well distributed, has a few focal points. And actually, no, I'm now realizing after flipping the Tay flipper, it's not that there's focal points. The weight is still really well distributed, but there's a bit of a handle bias here. The handles are obviously more heavy than the blade, which I think is what causes that shakiness, is that little bit of handle bias, which is okay. I'm sure that's how it was designed, and I don't think that's bad at all. Because my Nemesis, if you fan it, also has like kind of a shakiness to it. Although I kind of want to find a better example. I guess the Arctic. Yeah, the Arctic kind of has like that same shakiness from like the handle bias. So, man, that sounds good. But with the Tay flipper, it's like the distribution between the handles and the blade is perfect, in the same way that the Jigsaw is. It's like none of the blade or the handles or anything feels heavier than the other, but the Jigsaw falters because it doesn't carry momentum very well, whereas this doesn't, because it carries momentum amazingly. And whether that's to do with it being plastic or just how the weight is, oh, it's so good. Anyway, I think I've ranted long enough about my top 3 plastic flippers. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you all in the next one. Peace.